Well, good morning or good afternoon or good evening if you're tuning in from Europe. And for our friends in Asia and India, I know it's very late there, but thank you very much for tuning in. And Mark, thank you very much for joining us today. How you doing there?
I'm doing fine. Nice to invite me. I'm glad to be part of the show today.
Oh, well, I'm actually really glad that you could make the time to do it. The I don't know if all of you actually got the title of the show, The Evils of Automation versus the Evils of Human Error, with Marc Riquelme. Now, he's the president of Signicast, CIREX, and OptiMIM divisions of Form Technologies. But I also got to know Mark through Alex Carnival, who was on the show just about a month and a half ago or so. And we were talking about, if you will, the silo effect. And with Mark, the actual blurb here that we wrote, if just sort of to set the stage, people make mistakes and robots don't. But are robots and technology actually replacing workers, or is that just a misconception that most people have? And is there really nothing you can do for human error except multiple layers of redundancy, or is that also a widely held misconception? And finally, can you combine new technology with critical error reduction techniques to achieve higher reliability with the people who remain? And just before we go too much further, Mark, I think the very first thing that caught my attention when you and I were talking was that this is almost accepted as a given. So when I said just now, more reliability with the people who remain, it almost has a universal acceptance that there will be fewer people. And I know when you and I were talking, and it certainly doesn't work very well to try to speak with parentheses, but of the people who might actually be more in number who remain would not be something that people would naturally think about. So before we maybe just get into all of that, Mark, could you maybe just give everybody a bit of an elevator speech around Form Technologies? I know you've been in the industry for 30 some odd years, but maybe if you could just tell us a bit about what all you guys do, and, maybe just a bit about the history that you went through starting 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah. A quick introduction about Form Technology. We are an engineering company, and we are doing a precision engineering. This means the companies, we got three division or three brands. One of which is Dynacast, and you discussed with my colleague Alex recently. This means Dynacast is specialized in die casting, and they are doing a lot of work for electronic consumer goods, but also a lot of automotive products. Then you get another division called Signicast, and we are specialized in investment casting, and we are serving a really large range of customer and markets, starting from oil and gas, recreational vehicle, toward defense, aerospace, but also medical market. This means it's pretty a large range of, I would say, a product and application. And we got also a third division doing what we call metal injection molding called OptiMIM. And also OptiMIM, they are making, I would say, a smaller part, but a very, very detailed, a very precise component for medical and also some defense application. This means, again, a pretty large range of product, but we are touching a lot of different applications. Our product can be on your vehicle, but our product, they are also in airplanes, and we also are making a lot of medical device. Recently, during the COVID, we have been involved of making product for ventilator. This means, and at the beginning of the COVID, we had to ramp up significantly because there was some product we're making about 200 product per month, and we had to ramp up to 5,000 to support the the big demand in terms of ventilator. And this means, and the team really did a fantastic job, to ramp up the production and to support our customer to deliver product, in a very, very short period of time.
Well, Marc, I mean, when I first got to talk, everybody, Marc says, oh, I'm in the casting business. It's not very exciting. It's boring. I go to a party. My friends say, what do you do? I say, I'm in the casting business. Pretty soon they want to talk about something else. And I thought, well, wait till you tell them you're in the behavior-based safety business. Wait till you see how many people want to talk to you then. I was telling them even the customs people don't want to talk to you at the border. You tell them you're a behavior-based safety consultant. We're thinking about doing a bit of work with you guys. You'll have that passport stamp. You'll be on your way faster than you can say Jiminy Cricket. But Marc, it sounds pretty interesting. I know Alex also mentioned some of the things you'll do even for the making of razors and things like that. So, it was interesting that he also knew Anthony and they'd been on the expert panels together as well. Now, Marc, when you started there, it was about 20 years ago. And how many employees did you have then?
Yeah, Signicast was a small business with about, I would say, a Signicast North America first. It was about 100 people. And there was a person called Terry Luce. He was the owner of Signicast at the time. He had a vision how to grow this business and how we can grow the business to lean manufacturing, but also automation. And actually, to the year, we grow from 100 people with one plant to 9 plants with more than 1,000 people. And all of that, the growth came up through automation. And this means, there is a lot of people thinking the automation remove a job. Actually, it depends how you take it. If you want to use automation to cut people, you can do that. But the goal of the company was to use automation to grow and to be able to access to different markets and to become more competitive. Because we are working in a very competitive market. I would say some of the products, they are commercial and also industrial products. And we got a lot of competition for overseas, and especially from China. And at the time, 20 years ago, China was growing up in our industry and taking market share. And there was 2 options for the company, either to give up, like a lot of companies, that's happened to a lot of companies in the US, or to invest in new technology and to invest in automation. And through this investment, the company grew. And the company retained some market share, but also developed a large customer. Because right now we are working with Fortune 500, but we are working also with a smaller company. But that, because of this automation, we have been able to keep this business in the US, but also offering, I would say, a better job for the employee. Because automation, there is always this, when we talk about safety, about automation, you are removing job. Actually, like I already explained, we have been creating job, but we have been creating more interesting job also for some operator, because what we are doing, we are removing the operation, I would say boring operation, a repetitive operation.
Well, Mike, let me just, because I want to definitely get into the second part of it, but I think just it's important, I think, just to stop for a second and say, like, okay, you went from 100 employees to 1,000 employees to what is now 1,700 employees.
Correct.
And the tool, if you will, that you used for the growth was automation. Now, I think the reason, and it's fairly intuitive. I mean, when people sort of think of a robot, you typically, especially if they made the robot kind of look like a person, it's pretty intuitive to think that that robot is replacing a person, right? But when you really think about automation and smart machines and everything else, you don't really see that many robots that look like people. You see like welding robots and things that can move very quickly in cages, very reliably also as well. In other words, the robot isn't going to get tired, and it isn't necessarily going to make more mistakes at the end of the shift because it's getting tired. And the robot isn't likely ever going to be in a rush, right? It's going to perform at the speed that it always performs at. So it's never going to necessarily get behind. And even if it did, it wouldn't care. Whereas if you make a mistake and the job or the assembly line or the rest of the crew is behind, the inclination to rush is huge, right? So on one hand, I think there's this myth that the automation is replacing people.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys actually used automation as the main, if you will, tool to facilitate the growth and also to enable you to be competitive where the labor rates were less expensive, I'm assuming, and so on. So how, and I don't want to ask you to comment on the rest of the world necessarily, Marc, but you've probably got a better chance of giving us some perspective for your group, your peer group, the presidents and CEOs. Most people think the robots are replacing people. When you get to your level at most companies, is that paradigm still in existence, that the automation is replacing people? I know, a lot of labor groups think it is, but at the executive level, have they sort of seen the same paradigm shift that you have?
I would say yes, because actually we have been proving, through, during the last 20 years, this automation was an enabler for us to gain market share and to win more business, and also to create value, because we've been creating value for our customer, because through automation we'll be able to pass a more competitive price and to retain value, but also we've been able to pass value to our shareholder. This being and also we've been able to share the value with the employee, because through automation we have been able to raise the hourly rate for our employees, and this means that also have been a competitive advantage, because all this adding value, you can share that at the different level.
Right. So that's another paradigm shift as well. In other words, although you're one ahead of me already, I wanted to get you to talk a bit about, because I remembered this from our first conversation, and you were saying, Larry, it's not just that we replaced the jobs with automation, it's that those weren't great jobs. They quite often could be dirty jobs. They could also be dangerous jobs. Right. In terms of the hazards that were there. So maybe just talk about the health and safety aspect first, Marc, and then I think this is just fascinating, although I hadn't thought of it before, that the people are now more valuable and hence they can actually get paid more. So but let's obviously a lot of our listeners are in the health and safety world, so let's just talk a bit about that. Like what kinds of jobs typically got changed for automation that would have been a real improvement for health and safety?
All right. We are a foundry. This being a foundry, we are dealing with a kind of heavy equipment, and there is also some risk instead of the liquid metal and the heat when you get some risk of injury. But some of the large risks of injury, we are using a lot of presses. I will call, for example, an injection press is when you are clamping with a high pressure, and that's on other company and other, that can become a pretty risky environment. This means, there is some safety measure with a light curtain, but still there is a risk for somebody to do something not right and to end up with a hand or finger to be crushed through to the press. And all these operations have been replaced in our plant here in Hartford by robots. This means all these dangerous operations, this means we have been able to displace the operator, and they are far away from this very pretty dangerous equipment, because you are talking about 50 ton to 100 ton wax presses. This means you can be severely injured, and it's pretty frequent on the past industry, people losing their finger because their finger being crushed to the die,
or losing their life. Marc, I mean, I've worked with definitely some companies, very sad, where the reaching across the press to get the far corner when it came down, so it wasn't just a finger. Yeah,
that's right. And now with the robot, it's been we've been removing the danger from our employee. This means that's one of the advantage in terms of safety to reduce the risk, because when you get dangerous equipment, if you put a robot, the robot also talk to the equipment, and this means everything is work together. And like you said, the robot don't get tired. The robot will, if is doing the operation right, it will always do the operation right all the time. And if something go wrong, then everything stops automatically, and then you get a system to call an operator to fix it and to get the machine running again. But that's in our industry a significant advantage. And for us also, we saw our incident and accident rate going down, and we are far below the average of the industry because of all this automation. And it's been the risk also if an industry is also abrasion, because we use also a lot of grinding equipment. And again, we move away and we replace operator by a robot, because that's another high risk of injuring. A lot of injuring happen on the end. People get cut, and that's also using robotic. We have been able to remove the people from the risk, and not for them to have to put their hand close to the place where they can be injured.
Interesting. Okay. So, I mean, I think that those two examples are really intuitive. I mean, I think every one of us could see, the loading the press with a robot, and obviously the grinding with the robot. Now, there's certain jobs, obviously, that you wouldn't have been able to automate all of that easily. Did you also do anything for the people, like in terms of, helping them to the transition of more value? I don't know if I'm asking the question correctly. I mean, but you didn't just fire the people that you were replacing with robots and then hire new people with new skills, I'm assuming.
No, actually, no. The goal was to train the operator, because in our facility, we got about 800 square feet facility here in Hartford. We got about 200 robots. But we got only 2 people doing automation, because we create some interface with the robot. All our people in the plant, our tech, they know how to make a robot adjustment. And most of the time when there is a die change, all of that, we have been training our technician and master tech to do the operation. This means we have been training people. There have been a lot of training. This means we are not been replacing people by higher skilled people. We have been taking our employee and developing them through the process.
And how did that, I would think that would have gone over very, very well with those people. Any insights or learnings from that you could share with us?
This means that we got a very talented workforce, and a lot of people have been a long tenure employee, because again, people have been evolving with the company and people have been learning. But what we've been creating interface, with between the robots, and the programming of the robot is pretty easy to access to every employee, because sometimes the issue for the people to work with robots is a very, very complex interface. But we have been developing our own software internally, and software have been developed to create an easy interface with the user.
Okay.
And that's been a big plus. And the other point also, we are developing our own automation. This means we got a very talented crew at Signicast. People, they have been designing equipment, because most of the equipment didn't exist in the past, and people had to create their own equipment. But all the automation have been developed internally. This means, but also the goal was, again, for the operator to be able to use the robot and to make adjustment on the robot, and not to have a closed structure where just an external company will be able to support when there is any change. And that was also a big evolution, because our robot system is very flexible. It's not dedicated on one product. We can be doing changeover pretty fast and pretty easily. And all the changeover, they are done in the plant, in the shop, by the operator.
Wow. Okay. And how how long? Well, I guess was it just a continual process over the 20 years? I mean, but you've also started adding more and more people, like almost 100 people, you know, a year, really. Like, I mean, certainly. So how did you manage all of the training?
Yeah, this organization is pretty neat because we start in this campus. Like I said, the campus is about 800,000 square feet. We start with one plant. And that all the concept we developed to that, what we call the mod 1. And all the concept, not only the robotic, but also all the product movement, because we are not being just robotic, putting robotic in the automation of the product, you know, the operation of the product, but also all the product. You don't see in our plant people moving product in the plant. There is all the product, there is a conveyor system, there is a very clever way to move the product, and this means for the people to add value and not to be working on non-added value, because I've been talking about automation, but also Lean and Six Sigma. And the plant was developed, and this means they start with one mod, and then every mod have been an evolution. Now we got 7 of them, but every one was an upgrade compared to the previous one. And again,
seven. You said 7 of them now?
Yes.
Okay.
And this mean, and that was built through the year. This mean, and the last mod had been complete in 2013. But that was an evolution. But every time the people, there was a lot of training involved, because again, you want to have, you don't want to have all the know-how to be in a very small group of people and a small group of engineering. Because another point about our facility, we are running a 24-hour day, 7-day a week.
Okay. So you are running shifts 24/7.
24/7. It's been we run with a 4 team. The people work 3 days in, 3 days off, 2 days in, 2 days off, and we are a 24/7 operation. And it's been usually you can get support during the day, but at night people need to be able to fix and also to keep the operation running. And that's the reason we have to rely a lot on our people and to give them also an information system, because we create also an information system where the people can get access to a lot of information for them to be able to take the right decision. It's mean also through automation, we have been able to reduce because we are talking about autonomy. People, they are very, very autonomous in the plant. In each of the plant, we got 1 supervisor per team. And usually if you are talking about a standard company, you will have 1 supervisor by department.
Right.
Here you get 1 supervisor, you get 1 master tech per department, and master tech is a kind of a team lead, and they are there to support the people and to train, but also they are working on products. And then we got technician. But people, they run their own, cell or their own department, and usually you get very few people because you get a lot of robots.
Right. Well, I remember when we were talking before, and I was saying, so you've got, in a way, fewer people, although there's more people in total, but when you think about how big the operation is now, so you don't have this that you and I might have grown up with on our first jobs. That's not part of the deal anymore, right? And you don't have as much opportunity either for coaching or mentoring. So the people have got to become more self-sufficient, more self-reliable as well. And also, I think they have to a certain number of problem-solving skills have to be passed right down to the individual, right? Whereas normally, oops, okay, I'm back again. Can't remember what was saying there for a sec. Can you see me, Mark? Okay.
I can see you.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Because for a while, I could only see you. And I was like, well, Mark's going to have to carry on with the rest of the show by himself. So in terms of what you're doing with and hopefully everybody's got the picture here, with the increased number of employees that remain in terms of, you know, their self-sufficiency, or just the fact that they can't rely as much on supervision and management. What plans, or what are you doing as far as that kind of stuff is concerned, Marc?
At this level, we are doing a lot of training, because training and keeping people, you know, trained, that's very important. And training in terms of the job they have to do, but also awareness in terms of safety, because again, still, when you are dealing with robots, you need to be, there is some safety protocol, because if you are bridging, because some of the issue we are encounter, sometimes people think, you know, there is some safety measure and they can remove some of the safety measure, and that's what we need to train, and we need to get the people the awareness about, you know, the danger also running with robot, because like you said, the robot will always do the same operation, and this means if you are in the wrong place on the wrong time, you can be hurt by your robot.
Yeah, well, definitely, yeah. The robots don't care, but that's, you know, that's also part of the good thing. Now, I remember when we were talking before, and I was sort of saying to you about performance errors, not necessarily learning something new or doing something new, but when, you know, we were talking about medical error, and I was saying it's not that they can't count the nurses in the operating room. It's just that sometimes, you know, because of the fatigue or because of the rushing, they don't get the count right, and a medical instrument is left inside people. So, you know, the idea that, you know, you can fix everything with multiple layers of redundancy, it's certainly something we're going to be exploring a lot on the next show with Dr. A.J. Kahari, because he's one of the lead scientists for the project on the moon and Mars. But, you know, the idea that, you being able to fix everything with redundancy versus trying to help the people from the beginning. So the question I asked everybody, asked Marc, everybody, was if he could think of a performance error, not when he was learning or doing something new, that wasn't caused by rushing, frustration, fatigue, and complacency, or a combination of one of those four states. And he's had a couple of weeks now to think about it. So let me come back, Marc. Could you think? And not including like sports necessarily, or a skill. Like, you know, in other words, I'm not talking about a lot of pressure and you miss a foul shot even though you're a 90% foul shooter. I'm talking about where you were stepping on the line where the guy shot the foul shot, and now he gets to shoot an extra one, and that's the one that can win the game. So could you think of a performance error since the last time we talked that wasn't one of those four states or a combination of them?
Yep, and I got a personal story about that one. My background is in foundry, and the metallurgy is pretty boring, and we already discussed about that before. It's not the most attractive stuff, but when I was a student, one day I was in charge of melting metal, and but safety for a teacher was very, very important. We had to get a lot of safety gears, and I was in charge of melting aluminum. And this means the metal was ready, and when the metal is ready, you need to cleaning up, you know, to remove some of the stuff you get on the surface of the metal. And I took a tool, and I didn't really realize at the time the tool was close to the door, and it was pretty a cold day, and it was pretty humid. And I took the tool, I put the tool on the metal, and then the furnace exploded.
Wow.
It's been it was like a cannon, you know, the metal, because that when you get reaction with aluminum and water, it's not very good. It's been and we had an explosion, and the metal went like a cannon, went up to the roof and get stick to the on the ceiling. Fortunately for me, I had all my safety gears, but I was covered with metal on my whole arm and also my shield. And at that day, it was nothing because I was rushed. I was not tired. It was just, it happened. And I was probably a little bit naive also because now I know, you never use a tool because you don't think your tool is ready to be used. You need to warm it up. I know that now. I learned from my mistake. But at this level, I was fortunate, we had people, we were very, very strict in terms of safety because I could have been burned pretty badly because aluminum compared to alloy, it really stick and you can be burned badly. And that was an example of sometimes it was no pressure. It was just, I thought I was doing the right stuff, but I make a mistake.
Yeah, well, I think, and although, I mean, I'd have to cut you a bit of slack on that one too, in terms of, being able to think of, the potential condensation, the water on the tool, from being cold. I mean, that it's not that you don't know that cold metal could condense but to think all of that without it being sort of put in front of you is a lot to ask. But it also gives you an idea of just how few exceptions there are sort of to those four states. And, one could argue a bit of complacency probably in terms of what happened to you as well. But thankfully, again, the safety gear and the redundant measures in this case, very, very helpful, right? So I think that's certainly an important point to get across to the employees as well, is that even if we're training you to become more reliable, like we're giving you swimming lessons, it would still, first of all, be better if you didn't fall in the water in the first place. And it would still be better if you had a life jacket on, right? But it's going to be a heck of a lot better than, falling in the water with no life jacket and not being able to swim. That one's almost guaranteed, right? So, the first thing we talked about, Marc, was that it's a bit of a myth that automation is actually replacing people. But it does seem intuitive if the robot looks like a person. It's natural for people to think that way. But if you look at what you've done, you've grown like 1,000%, and it was through automation, not the opposite. So I think that's an important thing. The next thing we talked about a bit was that some of the jobs weren't good jobs and they were dangerous jobs. And so the sooner those jobs could be replaced with automation or with a robot, the better. Because invariably, as long as people are loading the press, there will be fingers, there'll be hands, and every now and again, there'll be loss of life, right? Certainly, that's happened. Now, the next thing is the upgrading of the workforce from simply being able to load the press to being able to work the robot, program the robot, and potentially troubleshoot the robot as well. Is that?
That's correct.
At the operator level. Now, as you move this forward then, and as your business grows, what's the mix now of the people that remain sort of like, do you have more people, for instance, in sales and business development? More, I would imagine you do. More people in marketing, more people in administration, or again, has that, because I know in our place, the numbers didn't come down, but because customer resource management, or CRMs are so much better now, it freed up the sales managers to be able to actually go out and make sales presentations, because a lot of what they had to do before could almost be done for them automatically. So can you just talk a bit about the, if you will, the from where it was to now in terms of the mix or the type of evolution of the jobs?
Yeah, if we talk about the people in the plant, we got far more people in maintenance than any other company, because when you get all this heavy equipment plus a robot, PM is very, very important, because you want that to be, especially when you run an operation 24/7, you need to this robot and this equipment to run. And this means PM is one of the key points. And this means we hire a lot of maintenance people. And to be honest, now it's become a big issue because finding maintenance people is pretty difficult, and they are also well-paid job. This means when you got a maintenance person who is able to do electrical work, but also some robotic and all that. It's a pretty, I would say, a pretty interesting job, but also you can have a very, very good living doing that.
Well, I know you don't want to actually throw any real numbers out there, Mark, but I'm getting the gist, obviously. But I'm getting the gist of it, right? In other words, you're worth more. We can pay you more. Right. I mean, I think that's it. That's sort of a key thing as well. But having done, like, it's been a while, obviously, but having done a number of mundane jobs myself, I think I would much rather have the new job. Like, in other words, loading the press isn't that exciting. I know you say casting isn't exciting, but it's probably, your job's probably a little more exciting than the guy who was loading the press before, right? So, doing more high level things, I think, is just better for the health of the mental health of the human being as well too.
And another point you were mentioning about adding people, because we had a lot of resource in terms of engineering. We had a lot of people in terms of sales. We had a lot of people also in terms of machine science, because, like I said, we design all this equipment. This means we are creating, a different job, but there is more job because you need to support all this equipment. And the other aspect also I would like to mention is about we talk about safety and the risk of accident, but there is another one. It's called repetitive motion. When you do the same motion all the time, then you can have a long-term injury, and you can have, carpal tunnel. You can get a lot of injury. You won't see that, when you work for 1 or 2 years, but 10 or 15 or 20 years later. And that's also something also when we reduce the risk using a robot. Because if you're doing grinding, there is a lot of vibration, and a lot of people, and I've been working with people in the past, when there are no more, feeling at the end of the finger, because they've been doing a grinding operation with a lot of vibration for 20 years. And again, we need to think about safety on the short term and in terms of reducing accident, but we need to think about long-term injury also with all this repeating motion. And that, again, when we can replace that kind of operation by a robot, we are also helping our people to be healthier for longer, because it's not just a short-term issue, it's also a long-term issue.
Exactly. No, a very good point. I should have probably thought of that before when we were talking as well too. It's just the repetitive stress of some of these jobs is cruel on the body. Like, they finally got it automated so that, see, it didn't used to be that you could actually take the cookies and put them into the little row in the package with a robot without breaking the cookies. And none of us wanted to buy broken cookies, even though we were going to bite it in half as soon as we got it. But the problem was you can't be selective about the hand size of the people that you hire. But you needed a big hand to be able to do this job without causing repetitive stress. And so the best that they could do was rotate people in and out until it started to hurt, right? And move them somewhere else. I remember another place where there was a lady who was about 5'2", working beside a guy who was 6'4", on exactly the same assembly line for these air filters. And she's going to have shoulder problems and he's going to have a back problem. And the way their collective agreement was set up, neither of them had to change jobs if they didn't want to. And the company obviously couldn't adjust to these two heights. They literally stood beside each other on the assembly line. So I think all of us could see how that's really a job that shouldn't have been a job in the first place, if you will, right? In other words, it's going to wreck whoever it is that has that job. the sooner we can automate it, the better. So I think that's another really important point on the repetitive strain.
I would like to add a point at this level also is the heavy lifting, because sometimes also what we've been able to replace is from operation, when the people are to lift, because when you need to move 20 or 30 pounds for 10 or 12 hours a day, at the beginning seems easy, but that's taking a lot of, put a lot of pressure on your body. And if you can, again, to transfer that heavy lifting to a robot, again, you are taking care of your employee on the short term, but also taking care of your employee on the long term. And you are also creating a more diverse, because, there is some operation also, you can get some fatigue, because another issue in terms of the accident is be distracted, but also the fatigue. And if you have been working on operation for 10 hours, you start to get fatigue. And at this level, there is more risk in terms of accident. And again, when you get a robot, the robot will keep going, but also for the operator, they will have more diverse operation. And this means it's not doing the same operation all the time. And that's also what we are trying also, and still now, to automatize, to remove that, repetitive motion, but also the operation is pretty boring, between brackets,
Well, that's what I was saying. I mean, it's a dehumane. Some of them aren't the best jobs in the world to begin with, right? So, I don't think like the whole idea of if you go to the I mean, it was an air conditioning. They made air conditioners, and this guy's job was to take one piece of metal and another piece of metal and put it under the spot welder and then put it into a different bin. And there's some twisting. There's also the potential for him to weld his thumbs together as well, although he'd been there for 17 years and he'd never even burned himself. So I didn't want to suggest that the risk was imminent there. But 17 years of doing that, to me, I could think, I'm sure this man could have been much happier and put to much more productive use doing something else besides a job like that could have, and certainly now could be automated. Marc, there's two more questions I want to ask you, and then I know we're going to have questions from the audience, but you said 24/7. You're working 24/7. So for the people that are working the shifts, have you done anything to sort of help them in terms of coping with the shift work, educating them about the, for instance, the eating and things like that, so that you don't eat a big meal before you come in for the night shift because your stomach's going to fall asleep, that kind of stuff? Or, stuff for the family so they know that 2 hours plus 2 hours plus 2 hours plus 2 hours isn't the same as 8 hours of sleep?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's sometimes the difficulty, because we are doing a lot of training here at work, and sometimes it's difficult to it's the bridge between personal life and your professional life, and to bridge there sometimes it's a difficult matter. You got a valid point. We are trying to educate people, and also we got a wealth program to educate people in terms of eating, but it's a little bit difficult, because what's a company, we need to be involved, and where the private life starts, it's trying to find a balance. I don't know if you have the answer at this level, but it's a little bit a difficult subject.
Well, you got to. I agree with you. I think you can, throw the baby out with the bathwater if you're not careful here. In other words, I think it's fine, for instance, to offer to pay for people if they want to quit smoking, for instance, right?
Uh-huh.
But I don't think you should be too looking, I can't believe you're still smoking, Fred. That starts to become mind your own business, right? So I agree with you. There's, you can give people a subsidy on the local gym membership, but I don't think it's a good idea to go around patting people's pot bellies saying, when's this going to go? So, when you're any more than it would be a good idea to do that with your spouse, so I think you're right. There's a limit. On the other hand, if you go back to the example where you stuck the thing in the aluminum and it blew up on you, if you don't know, you don't know. And if you don't know, you can't really help yourself very much, right? So a lot of people don't know about circadian rhythms. They don't know about the long-term damage of the shift work and the chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
But we will see the effects of the chronic fatigue in terms of error or reliability, eventually back into the workforce, right? So it is in your own best interest, but it's more in their best interest. But
let me give you an example of what we're doing to support our employee. We got a chiropractor coming twice a week, and people during the shift, they can go because people start to get some pain, and it's pretty amazing because I had some back issue myself, and I went to see our chiropractor, and it's very, very good because he's a sports physician also. He has been able to educate the people also and to help them to correct their posture and that's some of kind of education we are offering. We are helping the people, but there is like I said, the limit between your personal life and the goal for us is try to educate, but also to provide resources. The resource is available for the employee if they want to use it or not. But our physician is coming twice a week, and we also get this hour for him to be able to get access to all the different teams.
Excellent. Yeah, we've got one too, Dr. Cannon, and he said, Larry, your posture was bad before you got the phone.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't standing up straight, right? Because you're kind of tall. So sometimes when you're tall and when you're young, you get a habit of slouching, right? Well, and then you add the phone to it, and pretty soon, yeah, you've got a lot of neck problems. The other question I just wanted to ask, just to sort of sum it up, was there was 100 people at the beginning. I don't know how many of those 100 people would have been in the plant. My guess is now, if we just looked at the plant workers, the factory workers, the operators, and the technicians, how many of those people now are employed by Form Technologies?
It's been probably at the time when we had 100 employees, there was probably 60, 65 people, working in the plant. And now we've got probably, I would say we are around 600. We are still hiring, but we are around 600 people. It's been, yeah.
So I think that, for those of the people listening, I'm obviously really big on paradigm shifts, but for me, that was a really big paradigm shift, Marc, was that the automation was improving the number, not decreasing the number, that it was increasing. And yet I knew as soon as I said the thing in the marketing bit about the people who remain, everybody would intuitively accept it, because that's the popular line of thought, is that the robots are replacing the people.
Mm-hmm.
But we're actually replacing bad jobs and unpleasant jobs and unsafe jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And we're giving people better things to do that's making the company more competitive. And the people are probably a lot, their lifestyle is a lot happier, a lot better, right? Like I said, 2 pieces of metal under a spot welder for 8 hours a day, 17 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to be thinking, hey, I think I could do a little bit more. I could do a little bit more than that. So I think there's a lot of people that sort of have it viewed from the wrong lens, or if they could come around and look at it from the other way. Now, the last part of this going forward, Marc, is fairly straightforward, but I think it would be better to hear it from you than from me. And that is, in the next 10 years, do you think this trend is going to stop, or do you think it's going to keep going, or do you think it is going to accelerate? And I know it's prosecution leading the witness here, but everybody that's listening, I'm sure, knows what the answer is, and that is, fighting this is a fool's errand. Mm-hmm. It's not, like, there is no sense in fighting this. It is going to happen.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? And could you tell us, any advice you'd be willing to sort of throw out to people in your position, sort of going forward here, right? That, we only got about 10 minutes, but take as much time as you want, Marc.
Now, first of all, clearly this innovation and automation will carry on, because now it's not only the robotic, there is some artificial intelligence, AI, will come and become more and more prevalent in our business. The other point also in terms of labor, it's very difficult already now to find people wanting to work in we got a very clean environment in in manufacturing. Manufacturing, we are talking about foundry. Foundry is not very sexy, but manufacturing is not very attractive.
He can say that, everybody. He's French, and it's different there. I remember when Cedric said to me, your workbooks, Larry, they're not very sexy. And I thought, if I produce sexy workbooks, they would definitely not sell it. Well, they probably would sell in North America, but not necessarily through the HR department. But I know what you mean, right? It's not.
That's and the point also, we got a lot of people. They have been raised up, baby boomer. They are going to retire in the next 5 years. It's been losing a lot of people. They have been used to work in manufacturing, and now manufacturing is not really attractive. We need to do something different to attract people, because, like I said, manufacturing also is evolving, and I think also if we are doing more automation, we can create different jobs where we can attract the new generation to come to work in our factory and to produce product, because what we are doing is necessary for the whole society, because like I said, we all fly in plane, we all need a medical device, and this one, somebody need to manufacture them, and this being robotic, and we'll be keeping doing that in order for us to be part of the society, because finding people, like I said, is difficult today. It will be difficult tomorrow, but also more robots. We can reduce also the risk, but offering, I would say, a better job and also better paid job. This means it would be a higher end job, but the job will be still there. But we need to keep manufacturing is still important. We cannot just doing a retail and entertainment.
We can't just become a service economy, you mean?
That's right. And either we accept all of that would be produced overseas and all that, but we see recently what happened, with all this very large supply chain. We need to be to maintain local know-how, but local production also. Because what happened recently on the Suez Canal, when you got a boat closing and then suddenly the half of the world economy stopped. And we see that during the pandemic, there was no way to get a mask, N95 mask in the US, because the majority of them were produced overseas. This means we need to maintain one manufacturing, because it's key for the society. We all need products.
Yeah, yes. I think, well, that was the last thing I was going to ask you, Marc, was just to talk about the importance of being able to keep these jobs in the local areas, in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, as opposed to having your whole supply chain, elsewhere. So again, I think you've sort of demonstrated a bit, but again, just any kind of, I don't know, Mike, if we've got any last questions from the audience or whatever. The last one I wanted to just ask Marc to sort of finish up here was just, if you will, any advice for the people in organized labor, Marc, and I don't want you to have to walk the plank here and not get back, but I think that there is a perception that the robots are replacing our brothers and sisters out there on the floor. And I think if you could maybe sort of talk to them a bit about, what your workers are thinking about the transition and how they've liked it. That's all. I mean, I don't want you to have to put words in one of your workers' mouths, but I'm sure you've talked to lots of them. What do they think about this transition or metamorphosis?
All right, this being the answer would be different for. First of all, it's again, you mentioned about the robotic removing job. There is 2 points. Either you think about your top line or your bottom line. If you just think about your bottom line, you add robot and then you remove the cost in between, and that's the labor. But if you use all this automation to increase your top line, that's when you create jobs. And that's why, that's the myth about, robot is, just to cut. No, robot add value. And if you use the value and the additional capacity to create more value, top line, then you create more job, and then also the cost, labor cost, you can increase actually like I said, the pay of the employees through that. This means the two of them can work together. It's not one against the other one.
Right. I think that's the part that everybody, well, that's the part I wanted you to say. It's not sum zero. It's sum gain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like I said, also keeping know-how and knowledge in Europe, in US is very important. We cannot also, and like I said, through automation, we'll be able to train engineer, because all the manufacturing also is pretty complex. And this means it's not just creating job, manufacturing job. There is also a very interesting job. I started as an engineer, and today I got, the privilege actually to lead more than 1,000 people. And I've been able to travel around the world because of, manufacturing. This means, yeah, I'm a big, I enjoy, I said casting is boring, but I enjoy casting. Even I've been doing that for a long time. But it's very important, and we need also to keep people wanting to work in manufacturing floor, but we need engineer wanting to work also in manufacturing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's not, you give the whole farm away, you end up with no food. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Mike, hi everybody, this is Mike Shaw, is our producer of the show. I think I was supposed to introduce him right at the beginning as he'd come back on with questions. But any questions from the audience, Mike, before I close it out?
We haven't had so many questions as lots of great comments and lots of people tuning in from around the world. But I put a question in the chat. I'm curious about robot and human interaction, and are there incidents during programming, maintenance, or adjustments? And then Ian Broughton looked like he said, yeah, especially at the end of night shift, for example. Do you run into human factors problems when you've got people and robots interacting together?
Yeah, we got a pretty strict, safety protocol, and this been, there is a lot of, you mentioned about redundancy. This been people to get access to the place of the robot, they need to go to there is a cage, and there is a lot of sensor and all that. If you open the door, and we have been putting a lot of safety, because like I said, the robot will be doing its movement, whether if you are there or not. And then because all this safety mechanism we've been putting in place, it's nearly impossible for you to access the place where the robot is running, because the robot will shut down. This mean, and that's something we have been taking very serious. But when you see about the evolution of the robot, in the future there is more and more robot when they can interact with people, and robot they can sense people, and we are using automatic also AGV transportation system. If you are coming close to the system will stop. And I think in the future also there will be more and more interaction between robot and people, and that on a very, very safe environment. This means again, it's not robots against people, it's combining the two and finding a balance between the two.
Well, Marc, I really agree, because obviously if you could get like your phone to say, hey, you're rushing, you're in stop and go traffic, don't let it get it frustrates you. I mean, in other words, the things that we're working on are trying to make the phone like your co-pilot instead of your number one distraction. Because if you're moving and you're at least looking at what you're doing, you're going to get the benefit of your reflexes, which isn't always enough to prevent it from happening altogether. But it's usually enough if you get your foot on the brake and you turn the steering wheel that it's just a fender bender, not a fatality, right? So that's certainly where I can see the future going. Not not like this, but much more like this. Exactly. Any other questions, Mike? Otherwise, we're at the hour, so I should probably try to close it up.
I agree with you, Mark, that probably with the advent of AI and how technology is going to intelligent robots, I wondered if that was something that you were looking towards. It sounds like you are, but do you have tangible plans in place to incorporate robots into things like logistics instead of just manufacturing? Most robots now are used in manufacturing, but they're becoming more common in logistics and things like that. Is that something that Form is going to do?
Yeah, we've been in our plan, like I said, we've been doing a lot of automation because all the product, if you come to our factory, you won't see any people moving product in the plant. The product move automatically. We got a very sophisticated system, and the product come to the people, and then the people put the product back. They add value on the product, and we've been using that. And it would be also we are using more and more AI for example, visual inspection, because we're making product and the product need to be inspected. And now we are using a camera, but sometimes they are not accurate enough, and sometimes also you need to teach them. And then we are developing right now a system with using AI to teach the system what's acceptable and not acceptable in certain product, because that's another it's not a very dangerous operation, but that's a very repetitive operation. But the people, the all day they are looking the same product, and that's something personally I won't be able to do it for a long period of time, because my eyes would be after 2 or 3 hours I would be shut. And that's the kind of stuff when we try to have a collaboration, and that's where we try to apply AI. But there is far more than that. There is a lot of 5G in terms of maintenance, when you will be able to detect a vibration or some temperature, and you will be able to do not just a PM, but the robot or the equipment will tell you when you need to make the replacement. And that's also some of the other avenue we are looking at in terms of the innovation. Yeah, there is a lot of innovation right now, and it's pretty amazing. And it's still an evolution, and that's what very, very interesting.
Yeah, it is still sort of at the very beginning in terms of what the machine learning and the artificial intelligence is going to be able to do. I mean, we've already seen what it's done to getting us to buy stuff online with advertising, right? So it's all coming. Marc, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us today. As I've said, everybody, I'm pretty big on paradigm shifts. Thanks, Mike, for your help. I think the whole idea that automation is replacing people versus that it's actually creating more jobs and keeping jobs in our own countries, and also better jobs for people as well. So, when you look at the evils of human error, well, they've been around forever, but we got better technology than, try to pay more attention next time, or try to be more careful next time, or as Marc was saying, multiple layers of redundancy. We've got things like the critical error reduction techniques that can certainly help the people to become more self-sufficient and become more reliable. Just before we close out, next show is May 13th. Going to be a little bit earlier, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time. And I'll be with Dr. A.J. Kahari. He is one of the lead scientists for NASA on the project for the Moon and Mars. I'll tell you all how I met him and how he's going to end up on this show. But we're going to be talking about taking human factors to the far side of the moon. So hopefully you can join us for that, May 13th, 1 o'clock Eastern. And again, Marc, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us and to actually, I think, dispel some of the myths about automation, because I think a lot of people, myself included, we had the wrong impression. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us, and say hi to Alex when you see him for me. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody. Thanks again.